Arthur Morgan and Joe Miller are fictional characters. Yet millions of people wept when their stories come to an end. Some players needed days before they could return to those games. But why? After all, our brains know these characters are fictional. So why does the pain feel so real? The answer may lie in psychology, neuroscience, and something deeply human: our capacity to form bonds, process loss and grief, even when what we have lost never existed in the real world. Does the brain fail to distinguish between real and fictional emotions? One of the most intuitive ideas is that we can completely separate fiction from reality. In a sense, this is true, rationally. We know that Arthur and Joel never existed. However, emotions does not work in exactly the same way as logical reasoning. During an engaging narrative, our brain activates various systems related to emotional processing: autobiographical memory, imagination, and the understanding of others' intentions. This means that even though we know a story is fictional, we can still respond to it with intense emotion. The neuroscience of storytelling shows that comprehending a story is not a purely intellectual process. Our brain literally simulates experiences as we follow a narrative, allowing fictional emotions to be lived as subjectively real experiences. Psychology calls this phenomenon a parasocial relationship. Originally studied in the context of television, the concept describes one-sided emotional bonds formed with media figures. Although the relationship is not reciprocal, we develop trust and emotional investment similar to those observed in real social relationships. In video games, this process can be even more intense. We do not merely observe Arthur or Joel, we live alongside them, make decisions, share goals, and spend dozens of hours interacting with these characters on a daily basis. Interactivity amplifies the sense of closeness and strengthens the emotional bond. A classic literature review shows that parasocial relationships share many of the psychological mechanisms found in interpersonal relationships, helping to explain why fictional characters can occupy such a significant space in our emotional lives. Attachment theory, developed by John Bowlby, proposes that human beings form deep bonds with figures perceived as sources of security, care, or emotional significance. Arthur protects John. Joel protects Ellie. But there is an interesting reversal. At a certain point in the narrative, we are the ones who begin wanting to protect them, not because we need to beat the game, but because we do not want to lose them. This shift transforms character into attachment figures. When this bond is broken, suffering arises as a natural consequence of the loss. Research on the dissolution of parasocial relationships shows that the more intense the emotional bond with a character, the stronger the reaction to their loss tends to be, approaching the responses observed after the end of significant interpersonal relationships. Let's analyze Red Dead Redemption 2. Red Dead Redemption 2 does something really rare. It allows the player to discover alongside Arthur that his life is coming to an end. This is called anticipatory grief. From that moment on, practically every mission carries a quiet sense of farewell. Every ride, every conversation, and every moment of contemplation ceases to be merely part of the gameplay and begins to represent time running out. In psychology, this process is known as anticipatory grief. We begin to emotionally process a loss before it actually occurs. By the time Arthur dies, our brain have already been processing this farewell for hours. Studies on attachment and grief suggest that anticipating a loss profoundly alters our emotional experience and influence how we organize memories and meaning related to the person who is to be lost. Neuroscience research shows that emotionally intense narratives facilitate the consolidation of lasting memories, explaining why certain scenes remain vivid for years after playing them. According to the psychologist Robert Neymeyer, one of the primary tasks of grieving is not simply to overcome a loss, but to reconstruct the meaning of one's life in its wake. Arthur spends the entire campaign trying to find meaning in his existence before his death. Curiously, the player does exactly the same. When the credits roll, we continue to reflect on his choices, his redemption, and the impact of that journey in our lives. The process of recognizing the story's meaning continues long after the game ends, bringing the experience closer to the psychological dynamics observed in real-life grieving process. That's called the meaning reconstruction. While Red Dead Redemption 2 deals with accepting an inevitable farewell, The Last of Us Part 2 explores what happens when the farewell is never truly integrated. After losing Joel, Ellie turns her grief into obsession. She continues to live, yet remains emotionally trapped in the moment of the loss, just like us. Although the game does not offer a clinical diagnosis for the character, many of her behaviors align with characteristics associated with prolonged grief disorder, a condition in which suffering remains intense and interferes with the ability to recognize one's life. Contemporary models of grief highlight that difficulties in integrating memories, identity, and attachment can contribute to the persistence of this suffering over time. When we finally take control of Abby, well, something changes. We continue to grieve for Joel, but we also begin to understand Abby. Well, these two incompatible truths begin to coexist. We want justice, yet we also understand the person we seek to punish. This psychological discomfort is known as a cognitive dissonance, the tension created when two conflicting beliefs on interpretations coexist. Instead of resolving this conflict immediately, the game forces us to live with it for a significant portion of the narrative. By constantly switching between Ellie and Abby, the game expands our capacity to understand different human perspectives. We are not obligated to agree with any of them, but we are invited to experience their emotions, goals, and internal conflicts. Research on narrative transportation shows that the more absorbed we are in a story, the greater our identification with its character tends to be, and the more intense our emotional responses can become. Perhaps the most fascinating aspects is that our brains never needed to believe that Arthur or Joel actually existed. It was enough to believe that the relationship existed. Grief does not depend solely on someone's physical existence. It depends on the meaning that bond holds within our own story. When a game succeeds in building deep parasocial relationships, fostering attachment, encouraging narrative identification, and allowing us to share experiences alongside its characters, it creates something extraordinary, an emotionally significant loss. Perhaps that is why Arthur Morgan, Joe Miller, Ellie, and Abby remain alive in the memories of so many players, even a long time after finishing the game. Because to the brain, to our brain, it was never just a story, it was a relationship. And every meaningful relationship leaves a mark when it ends.
What are you drinking?
Coffee.
Where'd you get that?
Those people that came through last week.
Oh.
A little embarrassed as to what I had to trade to get it, but it's not bad.
I had Seth under control.
Yeah, I know.
And you need to stop harassing Jesse about my patrols.
Okay. Dina. Is she your girlfriend?
No. No, that was just one kiss. It doesn't mean anything. I don't know why she did that.
But you do like her.
So stupid.
I have no idea what that girl's intentions are, but I do know that she would be lucky to have you.
You're such an asshole.
I'm not trying to.
I was supposed to die in that hospital. My life would have fucking mattered. But you took that from me.
If somehow the Lord gave me a second chance at that moment, I would do it all over again.
Yeah. I don't think I can ever forgive you for that. try.
I'd like that.
Okay. I'll see you around.
Yep.